The helicopter had already landed when Max refused to move. The German Shepherd stood beside the skid muscle's rigid ears pointed toward the ground. Behind him, smoke drifted across the burned mountain, turning the afternoon sky gray. The rescue team had spent nearly 2 hours evacuating hikers from the wildfire zone. Now there was only one final flight. "Max, come on," Daniel said, pulling gently on the leash. Max did not look at him. Instead, he lowered his head and sniffed the blackened soil. Amelia Brooks, the rescue helicopter pilot, was already climbing into the cockpit. She stopped when she noticed Daniel struggling with the dog. "What's wrong with him? I don't know," Daniel answered. "He's been like this for 30 seconds. Max suddenly moved 3 feet away from the helicopter and pressed his nose against a patch of ash beside a fallen pine. He sniffed once, then again. His body became completely still. Daniel recognized that posture immediately. Max had found something. "Max," he whispered, "show me." The dog scratched at the ground. Daniel looked down. Nothing seemed unusual, just ash roots and pieces of burned bark. "Probably an animal," one firefighter said. "We need to go. The wind is changing." Amelia glanced toward the ridge. Flames were beginning to appear between the trees again. "We have maybe 10 minutes before that fire reaches this side." Daniel nodded, but Max suddenly growled. It was a deep warning sound coming from somewhere inside his chest. Amelia crouched beside him. "What did you smell?" Max pushed his nose against the soil again. Then he backed away. Daniel noticed something strange. The ash was warm. He touched the ground with the back of his glove and immediately pulled his hand away. "That shouldn't be possible," he said. Amelia looked at him. "Underground heat?" "Maybe, but this area burned hours ago." Max began digging. His paws tore through the ash with frantic speed. Daniel grabbed his collar, afraid the dog would injure himself. "Easy, Max." The dog ignored him. After several seconds, something metallic appeared beneath the dirt. Daniel brushed away the ash. A narrow steel pipe was buried underground. Amelia stared at it. "That looks like part of an old ventilation system." Daniel looked toward the forest. "There aren't supposed to be any structures here." Max sniffed the pipe and suddenly turned toward the helicopter. For a moment, Daniel thought the dog had finally decided to leave. But Max wasn't looking at the helicopter. He was looking beneath it. Then he barked once. A sharp, urgent bark. Amelia followed his gaze and noticed a thin line of disturbed soil running from the pipe toward the landing zone. Someone or something had moved underground. The helicopter engine roared behind them. Firefighters shouted they had to leave immediately, but Max planted his paws firmly into the earth. He refused to move, and for the first time, Amelia understood that the dog wasn't afraid of the helicopter. He was warning them not to take off right now. The helicopter engine was getting louder. Amelia tightened her harness and looked through the windshield at the smoke moving across the ridge. "Daniel, we have to leave now." Daniel looked at Max. The dog still refused to move. Instead, Max followed the buried pipe with his nose moving several feet through the ash until he stopped beside another patch of scorched ground. He scratched once. Then he barked. Daniel immediately crouched down. "Something is under here." Amelia jumped from the helicopter and hurried toward them. "Can you tell what it is?" "Not yet." Daniel cleared away the loose ash with his gloves. A second metal pipe appeared beneath the surface. It connected to the first. Then Max began digging between them. Within seconds, his paws uncovered a rectangular piece of steel. Daniel froze. "This isn't a pipe." He scraped away more dirt. A metal hatch was buried beneath the ash. The edges were almost completely hidden by soil and burned roots. Amelia stared at it. "How old is that?" "Old enough that nobody marked it on the current park maps." Daniel pulled out his radio. "Command, this is Ranger Daniel. We may have located an underground structure near the northern ridge," Static answered. He tried again. Nothing. The wildfire had destroyed the communication relay farther up the mountain. Amelia looked toward the helicopter. "We can land another team, but we need to know what we're dealing with first." Max suddenly pressed his nose against the hatch. Then he started whining. Daniel's expression changed. "Max, here's something." Amelia crouched beside him. At first she heard nothing. Then she noticed it. A faint vibration beneath the steel. Not an animal, not the wind, something mechanical. A low, irregular humming sound came from underground. Amelia stood. Could be an old generator. Daniel shook his head. Then why is it still running? Neither of them answered. Max scratched violently at the hatch. Daniel searched the surrounding ground and found a rusted handle buried beneath the soil. He pulled. Nothing happened. It's locked. Amelia looked at the burning forest. We don't have time. Daniel knew she was right. The fire was moving faster now, but Max suddenly moved toward the helicopter again. Daniel followed his gaze. The dog wasn't trying to leave. He was staring at the helicopter's cargo compartment. Amelia opened it. Inside was a compact rescue spreader and a portable thermal scanner. She looked at Daniel. You're thinking what I'm thinking. Yeah? They carried the thermal scanner to the hatch. Amelia activated it. The screen showed the ground beneath them in shades of blue and orange. At first there was nothing. Then a faint orange shape appeared. Daniel leaned closer. That's heat. Amelia adjusted the scanner. The shape became clearer. It was moving. Slowly. Directly beneath them. Max suddenly barked. The thermal image shifted. A second heat signature appeared beside the first. Amelia's face went pale. There are two. Daniel stared at the screen. Two people I don't know. Then the ground beneath Max trembled. The dog stepped backward. A deep metallic knock came from below. 3 slow knocks. Daniel and Amelia looked at each other. Someone was trapped underground, and they were trying to tell them where they were. Daniel immediately grabbed the rescue spreader. We open it. Amelia looked toward the helicopter. The pilot's instincts told her to leave. The rescue officer inside her told her to stay. We have maybe 6 minutes, she said. Daniel nodded. Then we have 6 minutes. Max stood beside the hatch, staring at the ground. Daniel positioned the spreader against the rusted steel. The machine screamed as the metal began to bend. Nothing happened. He increased the pressure. The hatch groaned. Then, suddenly it moved. A burst of hot air escaped from beneath it. Amelia stepped backward. The smell hit her immediately. Smoke, oil, and something else. A faint chemical smell. Do you smell that? Daniel nodded. Fuel, Max growled. Daniel lifted the hatch another few inches. Darkness waited below. He aimed his flashlight inside. A narrow concrete staircase disappeared into the ground. The walls were covered with old pipes. Some were rusted. Others looked surprisingly clean. Amelia pointed at one. That one is newer. Daniel touched it. Warm. Very warm. Max started down the stairs. Max, wait. The dog stopped halfway. Then he looked back. Daniel understood. Max wanted them to follow. They descended. 10 steps. 20. 30. The sound of the helicopter faded behind them. The deeper they went, the stronger the smell became. Then Amelia heard something. A cough. She raised her flashlight. Hello, no answer. Daniel moved forward. Another cough, this time closer. They reached a steel door. It was slightly open. Max pushed his nose against it. The door moved. Inside was a small underground room. An old generator sat against one wall. Beside it were several emergency oxygen tanks. And on the floor was a man. He was unconscious. A second figure was crouched behind him, a woman. She looked terrified. Don't come closer, she whispered. Daniel immediately lowered his flashlight. We're here to help. The woman stared at Max. He found us. Amelia crouched. Who are you? The woman hesitated. My name is Sarah. Who is he? My brother. Daniel checked the man's pulse. Weak, but present. Amelia opened her medical kit. How long have you been down here? Since yesterday. Daniel looked around. Yesterday, Sarah nodded. We were surveying the old fire control tunnels when the entrance collapsed. Amelia looked toward the generator. Then why is this running? Sarah's expression changed. It started by itself. Daniel frowned. What do you mean we hadn't touched it? Suddenly, the generator made a violent grinding noise. The lights flickered. Max immediately turned toward the far wall. He began growling. Daniel followed his gaze. There was another door, a much heavier one. Something scratched against it from the other side. Sarah stepped backward. There shouldn't be anyone else down here. Another scratch. Then silence. Amelia slowly approached the door. She placed her hand against the steel. It was cold. Too cold. Daniel raised his flashlight. Maybe it's an animal. Max barked once. The scratching stopped. Then came 3 knocks. Exactly like before. Daniel's face tightened. Someone is behind that door. Amelia looked at him. We need to open it. Before they could move, the entire tunnel shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. A deep rumble traveled through the walls. The wildfire had reached the mountain above them. Daniel grabbed the unconscious man. We're leaving. Sarah shook her head. No. She pointed toward the heavy door. You don't understand. Her voice trembled. My brother wasn't the only person trapped down here. Max stared at the door. Then he barked again. This time something answered. The answer came from behind the steel door, a weak whimper. Max immediately rushed toward it. Daniel grabbed his harness. Wait. But Max pulled hard. The door shook again. Amelia stepped closer. Someone is alive. Sarah nodded. My brother heard them before he collapsed. Daniel looked at the unconscious man. How many? I don't know. Another sound came from behind the door. This time it was a human voice. A child. Help. Amelia's expression changed instantly. How old? Sarah swallowed. Maybe 8? 9? Daniel looked at the ceiling. The tunnel was shaking harder now. We need to get them out. He grabbed the emergency wheel on the door. It wouldn't move. Amelia joined him. Together they pushed. The wheel finally turned. The steel door opened several inches. Cold air rushed through the gap. Max slipped inside. Daniel followed. The room beyond was much larger than the first. Old shelves lined the walls. Emergency supplies covered the floor. And near the back, 3 people were trapped behind a collapsed section of concrete. A little girl was holding an injured woman. Beside them lay a teenage boy. All 3 were alive. Amelia immediately began assessing their condition. The girl was conscious. The woman had a badly injured leg. The boy was barely responsive. Daniel looked toward the entrance. We can't carry all of them through that staircase. Amelia knew what he meant. They needed another exit. Sarah pointed toward the opposite wall. There was a maintenance tunnel. Daniel searched. A rusted sign was barely visible beneath the dust. Maintenance access. Max was already standing there. He scratched at the wall. Daniel pushed aside a metal panel. Behind it was a narrow tunnel. That's our way out. Amelia looked at the unconscious boy. We take him first. Daniel and Sarah lifted him onto a rescue blanket. Max stayed beside them. The tunnel was barely wide enough for one person. They crawled through. Behind them, the ceiling cracked. A large piece of concrete crashed into the room. Sarah screamed. Keep moving. Daniel pushed the boy forward. Amelia followed behind him. Max suddenly stopped. His ears rose. He turned around. Daniel looked back. What is it, Max? Growled toward the darkness behind them. Then a loud metallic crash echoed through the tunnel. The main passage had collapsed. Their only way back was gone. Amelia's breathing became faster. Daniel. I know. They continued crawling. After nearly 50 yards, the tunnel opened into a larger chamber. Daniel saw daylight, an emergency exit, but it was sealed by a metal grate. He grabbed it, locked. Amelia pulled out her emergency cutter. Move. She cut through the first bar, then the second. Outside smoke poured through the opening, but fresh air came with it. They were almost out. Suddenly, Max ran toward the entrance and barked violently. Daniel turned. The tunnel behind them was filling with smoke. The fire had entered the underground system. Go, Amelia shouted. Daniel pushed the injured boy through the opening. Sarah followed with the little girl. Amelia pulled the injured woman behind her. Then the tunnel ceiling began collapsing. Max remained inside. Daniel shouted his name. The dog looked back once, then disappeared into the smoke. Daniel's heart stopped. Max. Daniel tried to run back inside. Amelia grabbed his arm. No, Max is still in there. The tunnel is collapsing. Daniel pulled away. Then they heard barking. One bark, then another. Max appeared through the smoke. He was dragging something behind him. A rescue rope. Daniel immediately understood. The dog had found another emergency line. He grabbed it. Pull, Amelia and Sarah pulled together. A few seconds later, another firefighter appeared through the smoke. Then another. They had reached the underground exit from the opposite side. The rescue team moved quickly. The injured woman was carried outside. The unconscious boy was placed on a stretcher. The little girl refused to let go of Max. "You found us," she whispered. Max stood quietly beside her, covered in ash. Daniel looked back toward the tunnel. Smoke was pouring from the entrance. Amelia checked the mountainside. The fire was approaching fast. "We're leaving now." The helicopter landed nearby. The rescue crew loaded the survivors. Daniel opened the helicopter door. "Max, come on!" Max stepped forward, then stopped. He turned toward the ground. Daniel frowned. "What now?" Max lowered his nose. He sniffed the ash near the helicopter. Amelia looked at him. Again, Max moved 3 feet toward the burned slope. Then he barked. Daniel walked over. There was a faint smell of gasoline. He crouched. The soil was disturbed. He scraped away the ash. A second buried pipe appeared. Amelia stared at it. That system connects to the old tunnel. Daniel followed the pipe with his eyes. It disappeared beneath the mountain. Max began digging. The helicopter pilot shouted that they had to leave, but Daniel knew better now. He raised his hand, shut down the engine. The rotor slowed. Everyone became silent. Max pressed his ear against the ground. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then knock, knock, knock. Daniel's face changed. Someone else was still underground. Amelia immediately grabbed the thermal scanner. She scanned the ground. One heat signature, then another, then a third. Her eyes widened. "There are people beneath us." The little girl looked frightened. "My grandfather told me there were old shelters all over this mountain." Daniel looked toward the burned ridge. "How many?" Amelia slowly shook her head. "I don't know." Max barked again. This time the sound came from somewhere farther away. Daniel looked at the dog. Max wasn't looking at the helicopter anymore. He was staring toward the forest. The fire was closing in. Amelia picked up her helmet. "Looks like we're not done." Daniel smiled faintly. "I don't think Max is ready to leave." Max suddenly ran toward the smoke. Daniel grabbed his leash. "Wait," the dog stopped. He turned around. For a moment he looked directly at Daniel. Then he looked back toward the burning mountain. Daniel understood. Whatever Max had smelled beneath the ground wasn't finished. The helicopter waited behind them. The flames waited ahead. And somewhere beneath the mountain, something was still alive. Daniel tightened his grip on Max's leash. "Okay, partner," Amelia put on her helmet. "Let's find out what's down there." Max barked once. Then the three of them walked back toward the fire.